Bison are looking for revenge in rivalry week, ready to erase memories of a last-second loss in the Fargo Dome and snare another win on the Jackrabbits' home turf. NDSU remains unbeaten, a destructive defense leading the way to victory over Northern Iowa, forcing 5 takeaways and punishing the Panthers with 6 sacks on the day. Now the Bison continue their push to the playoffs, going for their 4th straight win in Brookings against a top 10 team in South Dakota State. There's more than just border battle bragging rights on the line. It's the Bison and the Jacks in the battle for the Dakota marker.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Hello and welcome into the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. I am Alex Egan. She is Beth Hool, and it is Dakota Marker Week.
This is one of my favorites.
It certainly is. I don't know if you've watched any of the pregame shows before, but this one doesn't seem to like South Dakota State too much.
No. What's there to like?
What is there to like?
It is
cold in Brookings. They play outdoor football. Who does that? Here is a look at the Dakota Marker, the standings since they started this trophy game in 2004. 8-5, NDSU has the lead.
Yeah, and they've won 3 consecutive in Brookings, which means nobody on this football team has ever lost a football game in Brookings, South Dakota. Why start now?
That's an impressive stat. It's, of course, the Dakota Marker. It's a 75-pound model replica of the quartzite monuments that they placed at half-mile intervals along the state border in 1891. So
nice little ode to history.
Yeah, and, you know, we looked up some of the state history, and North Dakota is generally considered admitted into the Union before South Dakota.
Yes.
Because of alphabetical, but we think it's because it's the better of the Dakotas.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Glad we got that cleared up and out of the way.
You know, it's really funny, though, because this rivalry was kind of started because they both moved to Division I.
Right.
North Dakota was staying back in Division II. They kind of created this rivalry a little bit. This is a serious rivalry now, though. Not just the fans, not just because they tell you this is your rivalry game. This one is a heated rivalry between the players and the coaching staff.
Certainly, when you look at the history over the last 5 or 6 years, even in the Division I era, it has been a heated rivalry with playoff games and last-minute comebacks and just crazy games. We are expecting maybe another crazy game today out in Brookings. And let's go to Brookings. Ryan Gellner standing by outside in the cold. Ryan.
Hey guys, welcome to Brookings, South Dakota, where it is chilly, 39 degrees right now, but I'll tell you what, it feels a lot colder than that right now here inside the stadium. Winds today, 13, 15 miles per hour, so weather won't be a factor, although the chillier it is, the more the Bison feel comfortable. They want to limit that South Dakota State passing attack today, and this chilly weather should do that because I have been talking to some of the players. The ball does feel cold coming off their hands right now, and, well, if the forecast is right, it'll get to 45 degrees, but right now it doesn't look like that. You can see behind me, field conditions are fine. They added turf to this stadium about a year ago, and so the turf will not be a factor, and we haven't had any of the snow here in Brookings that you've had in many parts of North Dakota. Now, the blueprint on how to beat the South Dakota State team, well, it's been set, and it has been set by North Dakota State, who did it last year in the playoffs. You'll remember they lost a regular season game 19-17, but really got going in the playoffs against South Dakota State, a game in which the Bison won 36-10, and the numbers in that game really impressive. North Dakota State won the time of possession 41 minutes to 19 minutes in that playoff game. NDSU had 73 offensive plays in the playoffs, and South Dakota State had just 39 plays. Why is that important? Because it's been repeated. As you guys know, Youngstown State held South Dakota State to 37 offensive plays earlier this year, and a few weeks ago, Northern Iowa took the same formula. They held the Jacks to just 19 minutes of offense. So North Dakota State, it's simple. Get the football and hold on to it offensively, run the football, and then limit the Jacks playmakers. They've got good ones that we will talk about throughout the show. Taryn Christian, who's the player of the week the last couple of weeks, Jake Weineke, and of course Dallas Goddard, the big tight end. You guys and we here at the field will talk plenty about them, but weather-wise, going to be fine. There will be football, and the excitement's starting to build here, guys.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. We'll check back in with you in the next segment and have you and the guys ready to go around the Dakota Marker. That's what we will do, so we'll see him shortly here We talk about this being a rivalry, and to me, it really starts with on-the-field stuff, but then there's also some of the off-the-field stuff.
Yeah, and the coach is getting involved from SDSU, which is so shocking to me.
It's pretty funny. Twitter is a very funny platform. So this was a response to somebody's tweet, from SDSU football. Then they start bragging about their one-day camp versus NDSU's three-day camp. There's some really funny stuff here.
Yeah, well, then the big part is, these guys are in the same recruiting footprint. So
Right.
they're fighting for the same kinds of guys. So that's where the camp trash talk comes into play, and who you're getting at your camp, who you're getting these looks, and that one.
This one is great. What are we teaching when we have the same record and we have to still share the title even though they won head-to-head? This was a tweet that went out after NDSU lost to James Madison in the semifinal, keeping in mind that NDSU beat SDSU earlier in those playoffs to get to that semifinal.
And the dagger. Thank you, Trevor Gebhardt.
Hammer, Trevor Gebhardt,
Thank
throwing
you.
it down. Former Bison Trevor Gebhardt just giving it to him there. So Twitter is fun. Twitter's a lot of fun. We like to use Twitter.
It feeds into the rivalry. We call that bulletin board material, though.
Absolutely.
Keep on talking because you aren't winning.
That's right.
At the end of the day, you can talk as much as you want, but if you can't deliver on the football field, they've won, once in the last 10 meetings.
Yeah, that sounds about right. The fact of the matter is,
They won once, and it was a come-from-behind win. It was a spectacular win.
A fine
They had
win,
to go for it on every fourth down in the game, converted on just 2 of those, one of them being the one that mattered most. But keep talking.
And
keep talking.
It's not just us in the media. It's not just, people around the program. The players are all about this rivalry, too.
Oh, they love it.
Specifically, one, Nate Tangwe, who played in that game, the loss to SDSU last year in the Fargo Dome, and then he was out in for the playoff game. He was out with a leg injury. But, this is what he had to say earlier in the week. This is great.
I was really angry I didn't get to, play these guys last year the second time, and I'm really excited. I get up earlier, during this week, and that's all I can think about. But I don't like these guys at all. I would say they're my biggest rival, our biggest rival by far, and it's always a really tough game to play, and I just can't wait for Saturday.
I think that pretty much sums it up. We've seen some other stuff online from Trey Dempsey, guys that have been around.
If we had the time, I would run that entire interview with Nate Tangwe because that will pump you up. I love talking to Nate Tangwe on these rivalry matchup games because he's so passionate and he's so honest about it. He mentioned that, I asked him, is losing the Rock really that big of a deal? Do you guys care about the Dakota marker that much? He said, absolutely. Absolutely. He says losing that to them absolutely hurt last year, and they want it back, and they can't wait to deliver the same blow to that team and steal it from their field today.
So to add to the rivalry talk that we've been talking about, sometimes there needs to be a little bit of extracurricular. We talked about the Twitter. We talked about, some of the stuff on the field, but there was a little bit of extra in last year's loss. If we take a look at it, and Bison fans will remember this very, very well because Bruce Anderson got hurt on a play from Christian Roseboom, the linebacker for SDSU. And I know we harped on this a little bit, and if we could pull that graphic down so we can see it, there is Roseboom just cranking on Bruce Anderson's ankle. He went out that game. He missed practically the rest of the year, was able to come back for the playoffs. But this is a dirty play. I'm not saying that South Dakota State is full of dirty players, but this is a dirty play. And that's kind of what happens in some of these rivalry games. I don't think anybody's going out there to hurt anybody, but I do think on that play that was a little unnecessary.
Here's the thing. You can say what you want, but the dirty plays go back in history.
They certainly do, yes.
Now, Mike Morgan tells me not to put both my hands on my hip because it looks aggressive, but I'm trying to be aggressive here. So you know what? This is exactly the kind of stuff that happens in these games, though. You look back at Levon Perry. That guy had a potential future in the NFL. Got his knee taken out in this game. Sam O'Jury had somebody spit in his face during this game. Now, I'm all for a tough game. Trust me. I like a good hard hit. I like aggressive play. But there's a difference between playing hard and playing dirty. And SDSU plays dirty a lot. They play a lot of dirty plays. I know there's going to be stuff. I know it's football. I know you're going to extra grabs, extra tugs, extra pulls when you're down in the huddle, when you're taking somebody down. I get it. But they are dirty. And you know what? Nate Tangway admitted it, that they talk about all of the history. These aren't recent issues that have happened in the last 10 years of this rivalry. He says you can talk to guys from the 90s that this is what used to happen in South Dakota State games. And that's why they get so riled up. You can listen to the stories from the history of these teams, and it's consistent.
It's a long show. We've got a while. We'll get her fired up again for the rest of the show. We're going to step aside. When we come back, we'll go back out to Brookings and check in with the guys down on the field. Still plenty to come here before NDSU and SDSU on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison football pregame show.
The battle for the Dakota marker begins in 51 minutes. Hi, and welcome back in live from Dyke House Stadium now. Brian Sean, Lee Timmerman, my name is Ryan Gellner, and this is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison pregame show. And guys, this is all about the Rock, but it seems like it's a lot more than that. These two schools don't necessarily like each other on the football field, Brian.
I don't know if it necessarily started that way, this rivalry, but I get the feeling that as time has gone along, it's developed more and more, and I think that's because of the success that not only North Dakota State has had, but the fact that South Dakota State has been in the playoffs so many times and had their season ended by NDSU. Again, the recruiting battles are fierce. I think the coaching staffs are very, very competitive, and I think that's what leads these two teams to really develop, I think, one of the biggest rivalries in the FCS.
And Lee, it is one really good offense, one really good defense going at it today. Football fans should enjoy it.
Yeah, which one will win? I don't know. The fun part about sports is we don't know. That's the thing we like about it. But, Brian was talking about recruiting battles. I think you just look at the quarterbacks, the two quarterbacks who are recruiting battles. I mean, the Bison got Easton Stick. I know the Jacks recruited him, and the fact that the Bisons got Stick was one of the reasons that Christian ended up not going to NDSU because he didn't have to sit behind him. So, yeah, there's a lot of similarities just when you talk about recruiting and you talk about the quarterbacks. The thread runs deep, and that's the fun part of it.
Let's go into RG's keys and get those out of the way as we get ready for battle here at South Dakota State. And the first one is obvious. It's time of possession. Whoever stays on the field longest should win this football game. That's the blueprint North Dakota State set. Brian, North Dakota State is first in the nation in time of possession. Is South Dakota State balanced enough to be able to counteract that?
Well, I think they're going to have to be, because the last 10 times these teams have played, South Dakota State has won once, and that's the only time they won the rushing battle. So for them, I think they have to have some success on the ground, especially today. Conditions not ideal to throw the football, so I think it's incredibly important that South Dakota State tries to establish that. I'm just not sure they're going to be able to, because I don't think that's where their strength is.
Number 2 on our keys to the game is pressure, and we're talking about North Dakota State trying to get pressure on South Dakota State, something that doesn't happen very often. SDSU, Lee, has given up just 8 sacks all season, and Taryn Christian is the guy they want to get after, the quarterback at South Dakota State, but he's a guy that does a lot of nice things. He's hard to get to.
He does. If you remember last week in Eli Dunn, the pressure that he had, his eyes got real big, and all of a sudden he started dropping the football all over the place. That's not Taryn Christian. That is not what he does. His feet work so well that he gets himself out of trouble and extends plays. That's the tough part. That's the thing that he can do. But the one thing you got to remember, though, is Christian is a guy that will scramble, but he doesn't like contact. He's not going to get maybe maximum yards. He's going to slide. He's going to try to get out of bounds. So I don't think you'll see him having that today, the really great rushing day that he had last year.
No doubt about it, though, Brian. The Bison want to bring pressure. Now, Jabril Cox has to sit the first half because of the targeting penalty last week. But the good news is Chris Board should be back for the Bison. Can they bring pressure without Cox?
I think the idea for North Dakota State today is try to bring pressure with 4 and not have to rely on extra defenders to bring in. And I think they believe they can get to the quarterback with 4. And so I think for them, that's going to be the big matchup to watch, especially if you get in a 3rd and long. And again, South Dakota State's #1 in the nation in 3rd down efficiency. 56% leads the country. So they do a really good job on 3rd down. So I think for NDSU, you got to be a little bit calculated when you get to 3rd down.
Finally, our third key is, we call it Stig Ball. It's a term we made up, but it really is something. Every year, SDSU coach John Stiglmeyer throws something new at NDSU. A few years ago, it was Zach Zenner who came out of nowhere and ran the Wildcat in front of North Dakota State. Last year, they went for it on fourth down every single time, and Taryn Christian wasn't a running quarterback until he played North Dakota State. Lee, let's start with you. What possibly can SDSU throw at NDSU this year?
I'm sure that'll be something, but the thing that SDSU has that I really like in their traditional play calling and their offensive scheme is they have a lot of what the coaches call RPOs, run pass options. Every running play looks like it could be a passing play. Every passing play looks like it could be a running play. That's another reason that Christian is so good. And it worked last week a little bit. They just threw a little pass out to Lewis. He zipped up the sideline, scored a touchdown. That might have been a running play right up until the snap. So I don't know if it'll be anything as crazy as a Wildcat, but I know that Jackson, I know Stig wants to be able to run. I don't think that Mingarelli's going to have a great day on the ground today.
Wow, big, bold prediction coming from Lee.
No, I don't. I don't think it's that bold. Their offensive line's not that good.
Have a little fun with us, Lee.
Okay, I will.
Brian, these two teams, they know each other.
Yeah, really
and
well.
That's scary. When you know each other this well, sometimes you have to come up with these gimmicky things. Both sides seem to want to do it.
Well, and I think you talked about it. Was South Dakota State going to bring out something new? I think North Dakota State's going to have to bring out something new. They got to show some different wrinkles offensively. They got to show some different wrinkles defensively. I think it really goes for everybody. Each of these teams have to do something a little bit differently to see how the other team reacts to it. And if the other team reacts to it well, then they got to go back and find something else, because you can't just run what you've always run against them the last 8 times you've played and expect it to be successful. So we'll see how each team adjusts throughout the course of the game, and especially into the second half. We'll see what adjustments each coaching staff makes as well.
Let's talk matchups for just a little bit. Dallas Goddard is 6'4". Weineke is 6'4". The Bison D-backs are about 6 foot, and that's maybe on a good day. Lee, let's talk about that. As a quarterback on 6'4", if you can get it close within that frame, you've got a chance.
Well, you know, Goddard's done all these great one-handed catches, and he's just, I mean, he was 270-plus pounds at the beginning of the year. He's lost some of that weight. I think some of that was that the NFL scouts are looking at him. He's looking at it hard. There's a lot of NFL teams here today, but Goddard is the one guy that NDSU simply cannot guard one-on-one. I know DeLuca's going to be around him a little bit today, that type of thing. And then when you have Weineke, 6'4", most of his touchdowns are just simple little pass patterns. Fades into the corner, one-on-one against a cornerback, really, really tough to stop because Weineke, when he gets his hand on the ball, he catches it, as we know, on the last play of the game, or toward the last play of the game last year.
Yeah, he can do it. And then for Bison fans, you need to know about Taryn Christian, and Lee alluded to it. He can run it, he can throw it, he gets the ball out so awfully quick. They just have to know where the ball is and be able to trust their defensive backs.
You need ball skills against these guys. Ball skills in this game is going to be critically important. When you look at South Dakota State's touchdowns last week against Western Illinois, in my opinion, they were indefensible. I mean, they made the right throw, the great catch. There's not a lot you can do sometimes, so it's all about putting yourself in good position and not allowing that team to get into the red zone and have those opportunities. You want them to drive the field, not give up the explosive plays, but at the same time, when you get in the red zone, you have to know that those fades, who they want to go to. It's Goddard, not 86, and Weineke 19.
Yeah, know those numbers, know those names. You guys will be saying them a lot from the booth. Get ready for football. It's just around the corner. Both teams behind us on the field warming up. Our pregame warming up as well. This is the KFYR, KGLY Bison Network, and this is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison pregame show live from South Dakota. We're back with the head coach after this. North Dakota State has won 9 of 10 against South Dakota State, but the one that stings, the regular season game last year at the Fargo Dome, in which the Bison lost to South Dakota State 19-17, and that little pass to the corner of the end zone, a last-second loss for NDSU. Then they switched things, won in the playoffs, and the rest is history. It is a heated rivalry between these two games. It's all about the Dakota marker today, 75-pound marker. NDSU leads the all-time series where the Dakota marker is at play 8-5. 8 Bison wins, 5 South Dakota State wins since the trophy game started in 2014. That starts today's Herdline News. The trophy is a model replica of the original quartz-mounted trophy that was in place in half-mile increments between the North Dakota and South Dakota border. All along the border, you saw those quartz-like markers. The Bison had won 6 straight against South Dakota State in marker games until last year's win when South Dakota got it 19-17 a year ago up in Fargo. Last week in Fargo, Levi Jordheim had 3 fumble recoveries, and wow, did he play well. That ties a Bison record. It was set in 1976 by Don Meyer at Northern Michigan. It also ties a Missouri Valley Conference record. Not to be outdone, Nick DeLuca's 2 strip sacks ties an NDSU record of 2 forced fumbles done 31 times by 28 different players, last done by former Bison Cole Jurek. Speaking of former Bison, Carson Wentz has been named the NFC Player of the Month, thanks much to his 14 touchdowns in October. But what has everyone still abuzz is the Kuster family, the family of the Dutch Destroyer, and news breaking that the Coosters will be in Fargo next week to watch Carson's former team, the Bison, host South Dakota in the Fargo Dome. We hope to tell you more on that story during today's broadcast of the football game. That's Herdline News for this week. It's Saturday, November 4th, 2017. Moments ago, I had a chance to catch up with the head coach of the Bison and talk about this Jackrabbit football team. Coach, you called them electric and exciting on offense, and when you look at tape, they sure are.
Yeah, they really are, and so it's our job to try to limit some of those explosive plays and hopefully stay on the field on offense and keep that great offense on the sideline.
Good news is that Chris Board is back. The bad news, Jabril Cox has to sit a half because of the targeting penalty. But having one back, you'll take that.
Yeah, no question. We didn't think we'd have Chris back, and he looked really good all week, so he's going to play. And when Jabril gets back the second half, he'll play.
This is much more than a game. It's about a trophy as well, and I know your guys take that to heart.
Yeah, they really do, especially these seniors. They want to get that Dakota marker back in Fargo, and it's going to take a great effort by our guys. It'll be another 4-quarter great Valley football game. Yeah,
league-wise, Valley-wise, it is a big one for your squad.
They're all big, Ryan. It doesn't matter. They're all big, and playing on the road especially, you know, if you can steal games on the road, it's going to help you down the stretch.
Chris, thank you. Good luck.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
North Dakota State and South Dakota State, the rivalry continues. That is for sure. Let's talk just a little bit about the weather here since we're, again, live on the field. It is a chilly day, and North Dakota State really likes their chances on a chilly day because they don't want Taryn Christian feeling comfortable at quarterback for South Dakota State. If he's comfortable, he's got that run-pass option. They want to limit him. If he wants to try to run today, I think that's fine with the Bison that he do that. But the Bison would really like to make him uncomfortable, and this weather can only help. Now, it is supposed to get warmer here in South Dakota, and the snow is supposed to stay away, so a little bit different than the temperatures you're dealing with in North Dakota. As far as the game is concerned, North Dakota State really wants to run the football today. They feel like their offensive line is better than the South Dakota State defensive line, and for that matter, North Dakota State believes their defensive line is better than the South Dakota State offensive line. So if you look at the trenches where this one is at, North Dakota State should have the advantage there. We are about a half an hour away from kickoff between NDSU and SDSU. The Dakota Marker game is live right here all across the NBC Sports Network, both on KVLY, KFYR, and all the affiliates joining us statewide. The game is 35 minutes from right now. We go back to our Fargo studios after the break.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Just about a half an hour away from football in Brookings, South Dakota, as the teams are getting warmed up on a chilly day down there in South Dakota.
I do have to give this to the Jackrabbits. The remodel looks beautiful.
Oh, what a nice facility they have.
It looks absolutely phenomenal. Love to see the teams continue to raise the bar in terms of facilities,
the facilities
and
arms
atmosphere.
race, yeah.
And all of that. Now, if they can put fans in the stands, it will be an even better atmosphere.
Yeah, it would be nice to see some people in the stands. We've seen some photos this year of some pretty empty seats there.
Stick has been pleading with people to come and show up. That was a huge factor in their homecoming game against UNI.
Yes, there was
and
nobody
those
there.
who were there left at halftime.
Yeah,
so
not very good.
If they're not careful, this could end
for-
up a full Bison house.
There's some stories about that. We might get to that a little bit later on in the show.
30 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to get to some other things first, and that is first getting to know the Jackrabbits a little bit better, and that's where we turn to Ryan Gellner and the voice of the Jackrabbits.
Thank you, guys. We decided to invade the home radio booth. Tyler Merriman, the play-by-play voice in his 7th year calling play-by-play for the Jacks. And Tyler, this is, no doubt about it, an explosive offense. Talk about all the weapons that the Jacks have.
Well, certainly a lot of weapons. Taryn Christian, the only sophomore to ever win Valley Offensive Player of the Year, now a junior quarterback, and Dallas Goddard, who is predicted by some to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick in the NFL draft. And then obviously on top of that, Jake Winicky, a phenomenal wideout, who's been a 3-time All-American. So that's kind of the, I think if I remember right, Mark Farley referred to them as the triangle of terror or the triple entente or something. But those 3 are special guys that the Jacks need to play well.
If there's questions on the offense, looking at it from the outside, I'd say it's the offensive line, which is where NDSU wants to exploit SDSU today.
And it's been interesting because that line has had some issues as far as personnel, but they've actually played really well, even out at Youngstown State with their excellent pass rush. The issue was not the offensive line, it was getting the ball for the offensive line to block. So that line's been a little bit of a mash unit at times, but they've actually played well. They're thin, but the guys that have been out there have held up probably better than any of us anticipated.
Playing some of the best football right now as well, and that helps coming into a rivalry game like this. But the Jacks coming off 2 big wins where the offense has shown up, and really since going backwards a little bit, this thing has been going in the right direction.
No question. You look at John Stiglmeier's tenure here at SDSU, his teams tend to play better as October goes into November. They're doing that again. Now, of course, this is a different animal here today than it's been the last couple of weeks, especially 2 weeks ago at Missouri State. But offensively, the last 2 games, they played very, very well, and that Northern Iowa Hobo Day debacle looking more like just an odd blip on the radar, kind of the exception to the rule.
Finally, if you beat the Bison today, it's because of what? What's the what?
Well, I think the fact that the Jacks would actually have the football. I think if this is a game where NDSU has the ball 35-plus minutes, the Jacks are going to have some issues unless they're getting a ton of huge touchdown plays, which I don't think NDSU is going to allow to happen. So the Jacks don't have to dominate the line of scrimmage. They don't have to have the ball 40 minutes, but they at least need to draw even in those stats. If they can do that, then they'll have a shot today.
It is nice doing these interviews indoors, I'll say that, because we don't always get that, and on a chilly day here in South Dakota, it's nice to be inside. So we might just hang out for a while.
Hey, you're welcome anytime, Ryan.
Thank you, bud.
Take care.
Back to you guys.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan, and thank you, Tyler, as well, for taking some time. Let's get into a few of the guys that they were talking about. Obviously, the big one, Jake Winicky, the wideout that the Bison fans certainly know a lot about over his 4 years at SDSU, the 4 years that he's been playing. 37 receptions this year. He doesn't lead the team in that category. We'll talk about that guy just after this, but he does have 11 touchdown receptions, and that is far and away the leader on this SDSU team.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Jake Winicky, Dallas Goddard, they're 2 of the best in all of FCS football right now. Coach Kleiman talking about both of them on Monday at his weekly press conference, saying that they are absolutely 2 of the best, that they get asked about both of those young men every time there's an NFL scout in their house, just like he suspects everybody else is asked about Nick DeLuca. It's kind of how the game is played. They're certainly outstanding players, but the part I like, the thing I think is a game changer about both of these players at this point in their career is they are no longer new. There's nothing shiny about them. There's no new wrinkle. They are big, strong guys who can catch the football. You know what you're going to get. You know what you're going up against. Find an answer.
Certainly, yeah, the mystery is gone with these 2 guys. Let's take a look at the other offensive weapon, one of the other offensive weapons for Taryn Christian. That is Dallas Goddard, 6'5", 260 pounds. You heard LT say a little bit earlier, came in around 270, maybe a little bit out of shape, overweight a little bit. He's dropped some of that weight back off, and he's really become a force again for this SDSU offense. What I like is that 17.1 yards per reception. He is stretching the field, and you don't often see that out of a tight end.
He needs 25 yards to become the Missouri Valley's leading receiving tight end in history.
That's pretty good.
25 yards. Keep track of that today. I'm sure our guys in the booth will keep track of that. 25 yards away from being the best ever in Missouri Valley football history.
What I think is interesting about Goddard this year is his touchdown number is a little bit lower than what you would maybe expect at this point. Yeah, just the 3 touchdown receptions, but when you've got Winneke catching 11 of them, it's pick your poison really for defenses. Yeah. Who are you going to shut down? Are you going to limit Goddard? Or are you going to limit Winneke? And that's kind of the option that defenses have to choose.
What I remember about last year in the Bison playing SDSU was that those yards after contact that Goddard was able to get. He drug people. He literally carried them down the field because nobody could tackle him. It was so infuriating.
But the difference this year versus both of those games last year, and the Bison did a good job of limiting the Jacks in the playoff game, and that is number 49 is back in the lineup for Code Green. Nick DeLuca didn't play against South Dakota State at all last year. He was out with his shoulder injury, so that is where I think the Bison gain an advantage because Nick DeLuca can cover. He can match up size-wise. He can match up speed-wise with a Dallas Goddard, and that frees your safeties and your cornerbacks to maybe double up on a Winneke and keep him from doing too much damage. So that is definitely a big
Absolutely. I also like the maturity that the cornerbacks have this year for NDSU. It's another year of experience with these guys, another year of familiarity with each other, and I think they're the strongest they've been since, like, Marcus Williams was here.
It's a bold statement.
I know it is.
It's a very bold statement.
I know it is. Trey Dempsey's on fire.
Yeah, he's playing very, very, very well, as is Robbie Grimsley. James Hendricks has stepped in and filled up. We'll talk about Robbie Grimsley a little bit later in the show as well, and kind of a role that he's going to have to play today against the Jacks. We are going to step aside, but we got to show you this. This is a diehard Bison fan from Gwinner, North Dakota, and she's a little bit further away from Gwinner right now. Barb Melrose. She's touring Germany. She wanted to let us know that she is still showing her Bison pride from across the pond. How awesome is that? We hope you're enjoying the pregame show there. In Germany, it's an international game. It's an international game, everybody. We are going to step aside. We come back. We will let you know who's playing today, who's out, get you the injury report, plus we'll check in on a funny segment. That's all next here on the pregame show. It's a good thing they can't see what we're doing in the breaks. Welcome back to the pregame show. Getting ourselves fired up for a little football here today. Let's go back out to Brookings, South Dakota. Ryan Gellner standing by with our Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine injury report. Ryan?
Yeah, welcome back into the stadium, guys. Down on the sidelines with Dr. Ben Noonan for the Sanford Health Update. And we continue of when to go in. And the big question with concussions in football and sports in general has been around now for quite some time. But let's talk about those concussions, and not necessarily the concussion as it's happening, but the next day or signs and symptoms that, yeah, this isn't quite right. I need to go in. So start there.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to do, is really separate a more typical concussion, which unfortunately can have really variable and individual symptoms, versus something more serious like a skull fracture or a bleed in the brain, and those have some red flag kind of warning signs. Some of the typical concussion signs would be headache, kind of a foggy or dizzy feeling, troubles focusing. Athlete might be irritable. You can get some ringing in the ears, blurry vision, headaches, and even a single episode of vomiting. That can be associated with a concussion.
And that's all quote unquote normal, so to speak, with a regular concussion.
Right. And again, you have to really monitor them and make sure they're not getting worse. That's one of the things you'd want to look for. But that you could continue to watch and treat like a concussion with relative brain rest, keeping away from bright lights and noises. Some of the red flag things that would indicate maybe there's more going on would be prolonged loss of consciousness at the time of the injury. So that might lead you to seek some more urgent medical care. Really terrible headaches that are getting worse. Any seizures or convulsions would be warning signs. Any clear or bloody discharge from the nose or the ears. Repetitive vomiting. And then you also want to look for signs of any significant neck pain. And then really any kind of focal neurologic finding, like dilated pupils or weakness or numbness in one of the upper or lower extremities or one side of the face. Those would all be things that want you to go in. And then regardless of where you're at on that spectrum, really just watching it. And if things are getting worse, or like we talked about last week, if there's really any concern, you should just go be seen and evaluated.
And when we're speaking with the head injury, concussion injuries, when you see those signs and symptoms that are to the extreme, when you say go in, we're talking ER now, not wait the next day and call the doc.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, the head, the brain is something you don't want to take any chances with. And if you're showing some of those serious signs, these are things that, if present, would be dealt with urgently.
Good stuff. Appreciate the hints, and hope you never need that information. But if you do, there it is for you. Thank you so much, Doc.
You bet.
Guys, back to you.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Dr. Noonan, for your time. Let's take a look at the injury report today. Obviously, the big one, Lance Dunn. We kind of knew this last week. The hip injury, he is going to be out for an extended period of time. Chris Board, though, good news. Chris Board is active and should see the field today, which is doubly good because Jabril Cox will be missing the first half of the game with serving his targeting suspension. So that is the injury report today. Let's take a look at who the Bison, we've talked about who the Jacks are going to throw out at quarterback. They've got, the Bison have a pretty good one.
Their own junior phenom.
Not such a great week last week, but he got the W.
Hey, he got the job done.
That's what's important, getting the W.
Stop attacking Easton.
I'm not attacking him. He just doubled his interceptions from, you know, the last 2 games. He's thrown 4 picks. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Those are stats. No, but he is playing very, very well. 63.4%. I know that completion percentage has come down. They'd like to see it go back up to
okay,
that
it was at 100%.
To start the season. Yeah,
it's only natural.
Look, I'm going to be nitpicky,
no, I know,
okay?
I know, 100%. But I think a big part of this game, I think what you saw in some of the success that NDSU has had against SDSU comes in their ability to run the quarterback. I know that we are out Lance Dunn, and that's going to play a factor in this. We've got 3 running backs we're expecting to play today, but I think a huge part of this, a vital part of the success for the Bison, will be Easton Stick.
We'll talk about the 3rd running back that is now into the rotation, got his red shirt pulled last week. We'll have that next, but first, heard this one.
How do you organize an outer space party?
How?
You plan it.
What did the red light say to green light?
What?
Don't look, I'm changing.
What did the 0 say to the 8?
What?
Nice belt.
What is something that is red and really bad for your teeth?
What?
A brick.
How much does a hisper weigh?
How much?
An Instagram.
What is blue? What is blue and smells like red paint?
What?
Blue paint.
Welcome back inside our Fargo studios as we are getting you set for North Dakota State and South Dakota State on the football field. Our Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show rolls on 11 minutes until we'll ship you back out to Brookings on our Coors Light countdown clock. And we're going to talk about who needs to step up for the Bison today. Got enough there.
Wasn't sure where we were going.
We're gonna, yes. So our Bobcat heavy lifting player, and because Jabril Cox has to serve that 1/2 suspension for his targeting penalty that he got last game against Northern Iowa, we're going to see a little bit of a different look out of the Bison, as we say, and it'll be Robbie Grimsley that needs to step up today for NDSU. He is our Bobcat heavy lifting player.
Well, I think Robbie has been playing extremely well for the Bison for the last couple of years, actually.
Yep.
But he's having a really strong year. He looks as comfortable as he's ever looked. He's a very dynamic player, and he's able to kind of flex out in a variety of positions for the Bison football team, and I think that includes playing a key role in that nickel formation.
That nickel formation, the 5 defensive backs that they will bring in, probably more than they will be in their base defense today, just because of how versatile the Jacks offense is and how much they like to spread the football field. So Robbie Grimsley is our Bobcat heavy lifting player. Look for him to be closer to the line of scrimmage today as he gets set.
And I think think on like a tier 2 Bobcat heavy lifting player of the game, I think Jabril Cox, if he can make an impact and make his presence known when he comes in, I think that will be a huge punch in the gut come second half if the Bison defense can deliver that.
I think we can pick on a lot of the linebackers and say these are the guys that really need to step up.
We don't need to because they want to.
Yes, they're going to.
Those linemen, they can't wait.
Yes.
They know that if they can get that pressure on Taron Christian, he doesn't like it. He's not going to lay a hit out like Easton would or like Carson ever did. He's not looking to do that.
Yeah. But he will run. He will run.
Yes.
And he is a threat that way.
Run out.
Speaking of running, we'll go back to the offensive side of the ball for the Bison, and we saw something that we don't really see, and that is a red shirt being pulled really late in the season for NDSU, and that is Seth Wilson. And Seth Wilson, we got a chance to talk to him this week. Exactly. So with Lance Dunn going out, Seth Wilson finds himself inserted into the lineup. He's from Holman, Wisconsin, and he set high school records for rushing yards, for touchdowns, and he's got a little bit of a pedigree. His dad and his brother both played in the NFL. We got a chance to talk with Seth this week in a exclusive sit-down interview with him, and I asked him, you know, what type of a running back are you for people that may not know who you are, and this is what he had to say.
One thing I was blessed with was really good vision from my father, so I can see the holes, I can read blocks very well. I mean, I run pretty hard. I know I gotta get used to running hard against, you know, some of these very talented Division I players. So just explosive, shifty, and good vision.
So the thing about Seth, and we'll dive into his story a little bit tomorrow on the Bison Football Show with Coach Kleiman. His pedigree is definitely there. Comes from a good family, NFL obviously in his ties, but I liked what he had to say. Explosive, shifty. He's a little bit of a change-up between a Bruce Anderson type, and he's a little bit of in that Ty Brooks area of running backs.
Yeah, absolutely. He's determined. He's excited to be out there. He understands that he has a job to do. When we talked to him a little bit about having that redshirt pull, losing half of a year of your eligibility, he said, that's what the Bison need me to do. That this is a family. He's immediately gotten into it. He does have with the dad and his brother, you know, some hard times in his family as well. Extremely grounded though. Great relationship with his mother that he credits for getting him to where he is. He started off as a child in California, moved to Wisconsin. An outstanding story of really perseverance in a young man determined to forge his own path. And he has that opportunity to start that journey today in Bison football.
Yeah, his dad and his brother have had some legal troubles in their past, and again, we'll dive into that whole story tomorrow on the Bison Football Show. But back to today, he said, you know, last week the coaches said, okay, we're going to pull your red shirt. You're going to be that third guy. You're going to be the third guy. So when Ty Brooks needs a break, when Bruce needs a break, you're going to be that guy. But the way that the game played out, he only got in for one play. So he lost his red shirt on the 8th game of the season, and he only played one play. We figure he'll see the football field a little bit more this week. Another week of practice, another week of preparing to play a football game. That's got to help, especially a true freshman.
Well, like Kleiman said, running the football in college football is not just about running the football. There's so many other things that go into it in terms of obligations, in terms of reading the defenses, in terms of blocking, formations, all of the other things you have to know a little bit about. It's not just grab the football and run down the field.
And we heard he is an avid note taker in the meetings, and he said that's really funny that you bring that up because I don't really take notes in class, but he's filling up notebooks.
Coach Messingham saying he's never seen in all of his years of coaching that Seth takes the most notes of anyone he's ever seen.
So we'll see if those notes pay off today against the Jackrabbits. We will step aside one final time, and then we will get you out to Brookings for some football. The fans down there. Hey, I wonder if these folks got tickets. That's the big thing. I think they got tickets.
I'm sure
they're probably going to be in the stadium. 5.5 minutes on our Coors Light countdown clock. Our final thoughts are next on the Bison Football pregame show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show.
We'll get you out to Brookings in just a moment, but first, we will go out to Brookings. We'll check in with the guys and their final thoughts before we get football. Ryan.
Hi, guys. For me, the final thoughts is it is strength versus strength when South Dakota State has the football. SDSU's highly touted offense against NDSU's really good defense. So then let's flip the field. Let's talk about North Dakota State's offense and South Dakota State's defense. Which is the best of those two? I think NDSU's offense can outplay SDSU's defense, but we'll have to wait and see. Now to the booth.
All right, thanks so much, Ryan. I think my final thoughts coming into this game, I'm going to go off the beaten path a little bit and say, can the North Dakota State receivers get deep or make a big play explosively in the passing game today? Darius Shepard, R.J. Urzendowski has shown that ability in the past. We'll see if they can do that today.
Well, my final thoughts, I think, is a rather obvious one. Nate Tangway, when he talked with Beth earlier this week, said, I don't like these guys. And NDSU does have something that the rest of the conference does not have. They have so much depth at the defensive line, playing 10 guys again today against a suspect offensive line. That's usually a win for NDSU.
All right, Beth, Alex, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Beth?
I mean, along the same lines of everything they're all saying, I'm confident in the Bison defense. Where I need to see the Bison win the game is with their offense. I think that comes down, I'm going to go against Brian here a little bit. I think that comes down to the Bison running game. They won that second meeting last year because they had 302 yards rushing to like 67.
Yeah.
I think that's the game changer.
I think the team that wins the time of possession will win this football game, and I think that's what the Bison want to do. And we've seen the blueprint for how to beat the Jacks. Youngstown State did it. Northern Iowa did it.
Because the Bison did it
Because the Bison did it first. But we know what the blueprint is. It's a matter of going out and executing that blueprint. Keep the ball away from SDSU's offense, and the best way to do that is keep your offense on the field. Should be a fun one down there in Brookings today. We will have the game for you this week. We will have the game for you next week. We will have the game for you the week after that.
The rest of the way. Come back and join us at halftime, though, for our Proceed halftime report. We've got some updates from some big-time games going around the Valley and FCS football in general. James Madison playing in a big one today as well.
It's going to be an exciting Saturday. We hope you enjoy the football game down there in Brookings, South Dakota. Thank you so much for joining us on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show. We will see you back here at halftime. Enjoy the game, everybody.